Hi, my name is Jody. I'm here for the instruction on the Easy Watercolor class. I'm glad you guys could join us, and I'll talk just a little bit about what you might need. These are the most basic set of watercolors that you can find pretty much anywhere, whether it's Walmart or maybe even the Dollar General. And then I've got a watercolor brush. And you can actually use a brush that may not be watercolor. Just make sure that it actually has a nice tip and not a flat edge to it. So that's what you'll need for this class. And then as far as the paper is concerned, many of us do not have watercolor paper at home. It can be pretty pricey. If you do, it'd be something that you could use and it will work very well because it will not ripple or warp at all. But if you don't have watercolor paper, you can try to use cardstock that's at your house. Some people have been successful if the cardstock is shiny on the back and not so shiny on the front. Use the not so shiny part to apply the watercolor. And then if you don't have cardstock, you can try using, if some of you might have an art journal. That paper is a little bit thicker than regular paper, so you can definitely try to use a piece of paper from your art journal. And that's generally blank paper that you can get. Art journals are rather inexpensive, and they are very versatile. You can sketch on them and typically do some wet on dry watercolor, which is what we're going to do today. We're going to do wet on dry. Wet meaning the brush is wet, and dry meaning the paper is going to stay relatively dry. We're not going to wash it first. And then the other thing that you're going to need is you're going to need 2 containers at least. One of clean water that will stay clean the whole time, and one of the rinse water or dirty water from your brush, and then maybe something to wipe with. Okay, so on the table here we have a lot of different variations of what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn the basic steps for all different kinds of ways to apply using this flower method in watercolor. So I've got small ones, large ones, and then I've even got ones that I've sketched out after they were completely dry. So why don't we begin? All right, so I'm going to begin with 3. Just like this one, we're gonna be following the large flower method, so you really get all of the details down really well. And I'm going to replicate what I did, but I will start with orange. You can start with any color that you want. And what you're really going to want to do is you're going to want to get your brush wet, and then you're going to want to make sure that you get the tip of the brush soaked with more paint than water. So if you can see, there's a lot of paint loaded on this brush. Not to the point where I can tap and it drips, but almost. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with 5 circles. The 5 circles are going to have to be placed where you know petals can fit around. So I'm thinking my first flower is going to be that big. I'm going to place my petal, or the beginning of my center of my flower, 5 dots in the center of my flowers. Those are going to be the beginning of the petals. And that's nice, thick orange paint right there. At this point, I'm going to rinse my brush off, and I'm going to get a whole new color. Make sure that you tap your brush, make sure it's clean, wipe it off. All right, and then I'm going to dip my brush into very clean water, not the rinsing water, but the clean water, and then I'm going to go into a whole new color, and I think I'm going to do red. And the same thing applies. You dip your brush into the red just enough so you can have more paint on the brush than water. So make sure you swirl it around there, nice and thick. Give it a little tap, make sure it doesn't drip off the brush, but it's loaded really well. So then you're going to do 5 dots in the center of a placed flower. Let's see, I want to place my second flower. Will all the petals fit? Yeah, so the center is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this point, the orange and the red look very similar. You're just going to have to remember the orange is on the top and the red if you've chosen the same colors. I'm going to go rinse my brush, and remember, we're going to get the next color that we're using from very clean water. So we're gonna clean water, dip our brush in clean water, and then I think I'm going to go for purple. This purple, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I am going to get my brush loaded, and then I'm gonna shake it. Is it tapping off any excess water? No, so it looks like it's really good and loaded. I have a brush full of purple. So then I'm gonna place my purple flower. I think I want it placed at the bottom, but enough room for petals would be right about here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to make my dots a little bit closer together to make that center kind of come together a little bit better. And they're really loaded. Notice how the other ones have really kind of just been sitting there waiting for us. That's just fine. Go ahead and rinse your brush again in your dirty water, and then wipe it off on your cloth or whatever you've got, and then dip your brush in the very clean water. Okay, so this is kind of the tricky part. When you dip your brush in the clean water, we're really going to use the wet brush to pull some of the color away from the center. To do that, make sure you have no water dripping off of your brush when you kind of tap it back in to the bowl, because you don't want it getting away from you. At this point, this is a very easy flower. It's easy because we are literally gonna pull the color away from the center, and we're gonna make the action of the brush fan out like a petal. We will go ahead and we will turn our artwork around as well if you need to, or if you're really good at it, you can move around. But it's really easy. So this is a very wet brush, and the tip is just gonna gently kiss that small dot and see how it pulls. Hopefully you can see, and I'm just gonna fan the color, and I'm gonna make mine large, and I'm gonna fan and fan and fan. Now, if you've noticed, you can notice that there are areas where they don't have any color, and that's okay. That actually makes for a very organic looking piece of art. We're gonna do the same thing next to it. I think I'm gonna get just a small bit of water. So making sure that we're going to just touch the center of the dot real carefully, and we're gonna pull away in a fan motion. You can drag some of that color with the brush in a fan motion. You can kind of round out the petal if you want, but remember, you don't have to have the full color that lends to the authenticity of a petal. I'm dipping my brush back into some clean water, shaking it off, making sure that there's no excess, and again, coming from the center, I'm gonna drag like a fan. Pull it out. There's that one. Next one, I'm gonna rotate my piece of paper, and we have the orange one almost finished. I didn't re-enter the brush into the clean water. You can maybe get 2 petals out of it before dipping back in. And there's that first petal flower. All right, we're gonna start on the red one, and we're gonna go kind of fast. I've dipped back into the clean water, pulling away in the fan motion. We're gonna see how many petals we can get out of that one dip into that clean water. I would say 2. I'm gonna drag some of that nice deep red over and out. You can go off the page, that is really nice. I dipped back into the clean water. I'm going for my 3rd petal of the red, and making it really nice and organic. You don't have to complete it. Leave some nice space in that petal where there is no color, because it makes it look very natural if it's not all full of color. All right, one more dip back into the water for the last petal of the red, just touching the center, pulling away like a fan, and then we're done with the red one. These are the simplest way to start to learn how to do watercolor flowers, and they really do look great. All right, I'm rinsing again, and I'm gonna go for the purple. The purple looks like it's got a lot of paint on it, so get ready. You're gonna see this one. I'm dipping it back into clean water, making sure that there's no drips when I Okay, get ready. This is probably pretty powerful color here. Yeah, it is. So I'm gonna make the petals quite large. So that means they're gonna go behind some of the other colors. So I'm gonna have to be pretty careful here. So I dipped it back in, just kind of knowing how much moisture is left on your brush is gonna help you know whether you're gonna have to dip back in to get a lot of longevity out of the brush stroke. All right, and again, I'm not finishing the edges nice and clean. I'm leaving them kind of raw. All right, next petal. Oh, I need a little more water there. So I don't know if you could see that. That was really good to demonstrate. It was a little too dry, so just go dip back in the clean water and get a nice supply for that petal. All right, so sometimes when there's excess, you can create highlights right away. I was going to show you that for the other colors, but we have so much of the purple that I'm just going to do the highlights right now, which is just one stroke up in the middle and a few strokes up the side of each petal. Those are nice highlights. All right, one of the last two petals to go. Dip it back into the water and pull it out. So there's a lot of water in there. I am going to, because there's so much, I'm going to make sure I pull some water off on my cloth over to the side. If you need to get rid of water, you can do that. And then drag it way over into the next flower to create the illusion of overlapping. All right, and then the last petal. The last petal, pull that all the way out and way behind some of these other ones. This one looks like it might get right up there. There we go. All right, same thing. Let's see if I can't do some highlights. There we go. All right, so that is the basic structure of the flower. If you're wanting to layer colors, you would go back in with a deeper tone. If I did red, I would just do a little bit more in the palette, and I would line it just like I did with the purple and outline it. I would not leave it outlined because it doesn't really look too watercolory. I would make those outlines, rinse my brush completely off the red, dry it on your cloth, and dip your tip, just the tip, into the water. Shake your brush off and get a nice wash over each petal of clear water if you're choosing to highlight. That just brings a little bit more depth into each petal. All right, so now you know the basics. It starts with the dots in the center and you pull each out. Now, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you some of the examples that I did before. So for this one, it's exactly the same. They're all single colors. I only used purple. I only used yellow. But then, for this one, I ended up layering, so that gets you a completely different look. I've got red underneath the purple, I have yellow underneath the orange, and then I have green underneath the blue. You could also make something that looks like this, which is really deep in color, and I ended up doing the highlighting on the petals with some greenish black. So you can play with colors. And then this is a completely different feel where I completely painted the background, and then I not only highlighted with black, but I also outlined with black paint. However, some of these are the cutest. I think they're really trendy. Right now, you see a lot of things where they've painted and then they've outlined and sketched with like a black marker or pen or something like that. And the most important thing to remember with something like this, if you want to go for something like this, you do the exact same technique in whatever size flower you want to do, and then when you're sketching around each petal, make sure to leave some white space. White space around the flower gives that really great sketched look. You don't want to follow the lines of the colors precisely. You're not going to get the look that you want. You want to make sure you leave white space all around each petal, and that's how you get that look. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the simple watercolor flower. I know I've enjoyed it a lot, and doing all of these different wonderful art projects with you has been wonderful. Thank you.